Hello, Fiends. Welcome to the show. This episode of Fiendish Minds sees the return of my very first guest, Alice J. Black. She's here to talk about her novella series Soulseekers, which has just been compiled into a huge omnibus edition with Parliament House Press. Alice is a great writer. She's a friend of mine. It's always great to catch up with her. So sit back and relax. You're in safe hands. Hi Alice, nice to have you back.
Hello, thanks for having us back.
I had to think about it like us. Should we? Should we not?
Was it that bad?
I don't think you were that bad. I definitely was, though. I missed entire questions. It was a hard one to listen back to. Eh?
We can cover them today.
Yeah, I'd like to. You're back at work at the minute. What's going on with you?
No, I'm still working from home. With a potential view to going back part-time. So that'll be quite nice because then I think I'll get best of both worlds maybe. So working out of the office, seeing other people, being out of the house a little bit, and then being able to work from home. So I still kind of get a little bit of that, which is I think quite nice, and just having that space and time for myself as well.
Definitely. I know you're a right coffee fiend. Have you raided the coffee shops yet since they opened back up?
Only a couple of times. I've been out to have a Costa a day, which was lovely. But I'm just waiting for the local shops to open a little bit more, really. And I'm still kind of a little bit wary, I guess, and sort of conscious of where I am and who's around, I think, as everybody probably is at the minute.
Yeah.
But I'm looking forward to enjoying some more coffee in the near future.
I'm seeing people in the pubs, and I just like, there's a nice pub that I see on my walk. And it's kind of like at the end point of my walk, so it would be a nice midway point to just nip in and have a pint and then walk back. And I just can't get back to normal yet. I just can't see myself sitting amongst people yet. Like,
no, and I think the atmosphere in a pub, it'll be totally different. I just think you'll be conscious of who's around you, what's going on, how many drinks have people had. And I think for me, I'm not quite there yet. I'm happy to get a cuppa and have a wander around.
I think I had my most cringy Geordie moment the other day. By the way, you'll appreciate this.
Okay.
The other Saturday night, I was taking a walk along the riverside, so I'm right next to the River Tyne. And I was putting a decent bit of pace on. And can you remember when they brought our videos in, Pet, back a few years ago? And Dire Straits or Mark Knopfler they did a theme tune for it called YI Man. There was a cover band on blasting that out. And I was pretty much, I could hear it in the distance. I thought, what the fuck, where's that coming from? And then I noticed I was kind of walking in time with it. So here's this Geordie next to the River Tyne with YI Man blasting. And I just felt like a walking cliche. Like,
I love it.
I would have just needed like a black and white football top on. And so I had to actually alter the pace that I was walking, so I wasn't walking in time with it anymore. And I just thought, I've got to get the fuck out of here because I can't stand the weight of the Geordiness of this moment. I couldn't stand it.
Yeah, that's intense.
I didn't ask you the last time you were on. We didn't really talk about genre because I was so nervous and I just kind of skimmed through. So I'm glad we've got you back on quickly so I can kind of, fill in some of the cracks. And I never asked you, where do you see your work fitting in the sort of the spectrum of genres?
I got a business card printed a while ago, and on it says Alice J. Black, horror and young adult author. So I think personally I write a lot of sort of dark fantasy, I would say, aimed at a younger audience. I'd love to say I was an out and out horror writer because that's what I love. That's what I love reading. That's actually what I love writing. But I think what I find with horror is that it's a really intense thing to write. Like when I wrote The Devil's Playground, which was my first standalone horror novel, I kind of found that it took a lot out of us. It took a lot of going backwards and forwards. And I found that because I was delving into a really dark place, it was intense. And as much as I love it, I think I've got to kind of be in the right mindset for that. But I would say I always lean towards the dark side of genres anyway, whether it's supernatural, paranormal, like sort of psychological horror, are always kind of right in the darker vein of genres, I would say.
Yeah. And you're at the minute you're promoting the Soulseekers omnibus, on you? So
yeah,
all your novellas for Soulseekers have been collected into one volume. That's 10 of them?
There's 11 in total because there's like a prequel which goes with it, so 11 novellas, and then there's going to be a couple of like extra short stories in amongst the collection as a little bonus as well.
Yeah. So where does Soulseekers fit for you then? Who's that aimed at?
I would definitely say adult audiences. There are some adult themes, lots of kissing, that sort of thing. I think sometimes even the relationship between Peyton and Olivia is something maybe not for a younger audience, but I would say it's for those who like reading probably supernatural, anything ghosty, who like the kind of darker side of stuff.
Yeah. So tell the listeners a little bit about the book then.
So Soulseekers, it actually originated, I don't know if you remember yourself, Jack, but with Dark Chapter Press, when I was tasked amongst 7 other women to write about a strong female lead. And I wrote a short story, and from that, that's where Peyton originally grew from, where she had her own business and her and Olivia were out hunting ghosts and saving the world. And that appeared in 8 Deadly Kisses, which was a fantastic anthology. And what I found was, as I was writing that and as I was reading it back and editing, how much I loved the characters, how much Peyton resonated with me, how much I loved their connection and the friendship and everything that went with it. And I felt like I just had something. And our story just kind of grew from there, really. And I thought, I want to make this something that other people can enjoy, and it's sort of serialized, and that's how the novellas originally started. And I actually wrote like sort of the 10 novellas quite quickly in succession, and then I found a submission call where it basically asked for addiction horror, kind of looking in the, so anybody who was addicted to alcohol, drugs, that kind of thing, in their story. And for me, that was a perfect fit for Peyton's backstory, which has actually become the League of Madness. It wasn't accepted at that press, but what I found was that it's found a brilliant home in Parliament House because they accepted the League of Madness, and then the subsequent 10 novellas as a set, as a series, and they kind of originally came out 2 monthly. So it was like a really big whirlwind process of writing, editing, and then getting it out there.
Yeah. That's been some work. I didn't realize that it actually started with the story in 8 Deadly Kisses, which I loved. I remember the story and I loved it. I actually thought that you must have had all of the others kind of set up. Do you know what I mean? Because it felt like it just belonged as part of something. So I didn't realize that was actually the first work you'd done on that series. Yeah, because I really enjoyed it, and I was pleased to know that you were doing something with it. But I actually thought it had come further down the line. So had you written the whole lot before it found its home with Parliament Press?
Yeah, I wrote them all, and then I submitted the League of Madness for consideration. And at the time, Parliament Press were quite a small, well, they're a small press, but they were quite new. I didn't know what they were accepting. And I just queried and said, I know you're looking for novels, but I've got a series of novellas. Would you be interested? It's this genre. And instantly she kind of said, absolutely, send us the first one, we'll have a look. And I got a response quite quickly saying, look, we want to take them on, which was really exciting. And I think, although it's not my first sort of piece to be published or anything like that, I think it's been such a lot of work gone into it. And it feels like something that's really close to my heart. And I love that one publisher has taken that on and taken so much pride in it and took the whole series to where it can be now.
Yeah. And how did you stop the idea from getting so big that you couldn't write it? You know, you've obviously had this idea. The ideas come to you with the characters actually further down the line in their story. So you've had to go back over. How do you stop yourself from tripping over that?
A very good editor. I think what I had in my head for Soulseekers was the locations, because of the location for each novella is very unique, I think. And in my head, I wanted somewhere very original for each of them. So I kind of had a list almost of places I wanted her to be ghost hunting, or where I wanted there to be an issue almost. And from that point, that kind of almost determined the number of novellas I was going to have. And I kind of just worked on it from there. So I kind of started from the beginning, worked all the way through, and then went back to do a backstory. which was the League of Madness.
There's some things that really stuck out to me about Peyton as a character as well. And this is, rather than me asking you a question, I'm going to lavish praise on you really now. But there's some really lovely touches that I picked up on there that made Peyton so real. Things like her measuring, the way that she measures time. Mm-hmm. Throughout the day, she's measuring time in drinks, really, isn't she? Like her day, she doesn't notice really the time. It's all to do with drinks, even non-alcoholic ones. And you capture the sensory experience of those drinks, the smells, the feelings in the throat and the stomach really, really well, especially the coffee, I noticed, by the way, Alice.
Well, that's because I'm a connoisseur.
Exactly. So I noticed you managed to get some of yourself in there, but also then in the broader expanse of time, she's measuring it in her recovery chips, which I just thought, mm-hmm. You've done that so consistently in there. I thought that was really well done.
Thanks.
And in the League of Madness, a thing that jumped out at me straight away was how, for a supernatural story, the way that it's almost like she haunts her own life. The first ghost we find really is kind of her, because the tragedy that's happened in her family and her family life being cut off. And it's like she haunts the ruins of her own family house, doesn't she? And so the moments where she longs for sort of a family life, she's her own ghost in those moments. That I thought, I don't know if I'm reading too much into it, but it really struck me, and I was like, Jesus Christ, this is good. So that's what I took from it. But the experience of her alcoholism, you've really captured it so vividly. How did you get that depth and insight into alcoholism as a condition?
Probably primarily because of where I used to work, and the sort of people that I used to work with, and I've kind of seen how it affects lives and how it can break up families and basically how it can rule your life. And I think I've just picked up a lot from that over the years. I kind of read a couple of books and things. I know information about like AA, and so that for me was kind of an already background knowledge base, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It definitely comes through, and you don't shy away from it, like the chaos of her lifestyle, particularly in the early stages of it.
Yeah.
And she's very lucky to have a good friend like Olivia to help guide her through it. So obviously the reality-based side of it, the reality base of the character, or the more day-to-day aspects of her, obviously you've had work in that field in the past. But I wondered about the supernatural side of it. And have you had any supernatural experiences yourself?
Oh, that's a good question. Not as such. I have seen some things that I've not been able to explain. Me and my partner often go out. We like doing ghost hunts, which we haven't been able to do for a long time. But one of the most memorable ones was actually we went to Kielder Castle one night with a group of strangers. And I remember we kind of did a lot of the stuff as a group, you're kind of calling out, trying to get people to talk to you using the ghost box and stuff. But actually, we at one point went for just a walk around. I was snapping away with my camera because they kind of say if you do that and it sort of flashes, can show things up. And I brought up all these photographs in this sort of, it was like a converted loft almost, and there was actually a shape of two children standing in the back of this room, like a little boy and girl. And I mean, you can clearly see it. It's very much there. And I think for me, that was very like, it sort of sits with you. It was creepy, but in a really fantastical way, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I would
So you
say
weren't
that's
shitting yourself?
not then. The next day when I saw it, I was like, what were we doing? But we did a ghost hunt once at Jedburgh Jail as well, which was really creepy because you were standing in the men's block in pitch black, hand to hand with strangers, with the jail cells behind you. And I don't know if it was just because it was dark or what, but I could feel something there. And it was so intense and it was so quiet. It was the most unsettling experience. It was brilliant.
There's something about the Borders area as well, isn't there? Like up at Jedburgh and Kelso and places like that. There's a lot of sort of Tudor and Elizabethan history up there, isn't there? A lot of conflict.
Yeah.
And I think some of those old like Border Reaver buildings and things like that, and the jail houses, like like where you visited, there's something really kind of haunting about those places anyway, isn't there? A lot of battlefields up there too.
Definitely.
The rituals that appear in the Soulseeker stories, are they products of your imagination, or did you get some research into sort of Wiccan practices and things like that?
More research, I would say. I mean, I've got kind of books at home that I like to buy things sometimes and have a read and like sort of learn a bit more about certain things. And I did quite a lot of that for Soulseekers, I guess, books about witchcraft. I do have a couple of books on like ghosts and ghost hunting, books on like mystical creatures, that sort of thing. And I think all that sort of thing, and certainly some of the shows I watch sometimes kind of lend themselves to that a little bit, which is good.
Go on, what have you been watching?
Recently, Supernatural. We're just catching up with that. But I love stuff like that, with kind of rooted in the darkness. And I just think it's quite interesting because that's kind of where I would write in that sort of genre as well. So it's always appealing.
Very good. How does it feel then, now that you've obviously you published the last novella a while ago, but this collecting all these stories up in one volume, it's kind of a bit of a goodbye, I suppose, to those characters. How does that feel?
Sad. Like, I'm really excited that the collection's going to be out there, that I'm going to have this amazing book that I'm going to be able to have in my hands and be able to show people. But Peyton and Olivia were like a really big part of my life for a long time, and I think they still are. And I think I might struggle to let them go a little bit. I think there's just something a little bit special about Peyton that I'll miss, and our determination and everything she's kind of overcome to get to where she is.
Yeah.
So maybe, not that I'm saying that there ever will be another one, but maybe even if I write that for myself, I just think maybe our story isn't quite finished. Who knows? Who
You heard it
knows?
here first, everyone. Yeah, I did wonder if you were going to be able to fully put the series down, but
I think it's difficult because you've written the characters, you know them so well, they become like friends almost, and letting that go is a little bit, it's harder than I thought, actually. It's kind of hit us a little bit that tomorrow, or when it comes out, it's going to be that's it, and it is sad.
Yeah, and just for listeners to know, at the point that you're hearing this, the book is out, so there'll be links on the show notes for you, so you can go grab your copy today. But yeah, I can imagine it would be weird. You see, for me, I have to finish a story to be able to have this feeling. And since I can't finish any work, since I can't leave anything alone. But yeah, I think, you've spent a lot of time, and I think as well the nature of the friendship that you've created in those characters and that you developed with those characters, it's easy to see why, when you've said they feel like kind of friends to you, I can see why that would be the case, really.
Yeah.
Because you've spent so much time developing that friendship between them. The thing that struck me about it was the way that you've embedded the stories in the real world. So we've got these supernatural events happening to people who feel really real. How do you think horror fiction can help us make sense of the world around us?
Oh, that's a very deep question.
Isn't it? But I think in our time, when you think about it, we've talked before about how 2020 feels like a fucking horror movie anyway.
Yeah.
And how does what we read in that help make sense of that, do you think?
I think the thing with horror is it kind of sometimes brings to life things that you don't expect to happen sometimes. I mean, obviously the supernatural and stuff, a lot of people are skeptical, a lot of people wouldn't believe in ghosts or hauntings, anything paranormal, that sort of thing. But I think sometimes it kind of casts a grey area between what could happen, what is happening, what's reality, what's not, and can almost kind of prepare you for, actually, the world can become a really dangerous and scary place. This is what could happen in some ways, whether it's ghosts or an apocalypse, the end of the world. And maybe it's not that far away. So it kind of gives you that, not almost like a preparation, like not to assume that everything's going to be perfect all the time. Like, I don't know, just being aware that reality can be harsh, that there are things out there that can be dangerous and can harm you and can harm the people around you. And it's not always kind of flowers and butterflies. I don't know.
Yeah. And then I guess the beauty of it is that you do get to close the book, or you do get to switch the movie off, don't you? And go back to your comfortable life with a little bit of, but what if?
Bit of perspective, a bit of different sort of knowledge or thinking, maybe.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. And to go through something that's really intensely frightening, I guess, and something that feels like it couldn't happen in real life, but you've gone through the emotional experience of surviving it in your mind through reading the story. I guess that does prepare you in some small way, doesn't it? Takes you to the brink, but then you get to step away from the brink.
Yeah.
Whereas in real life, if you hit that brink, you ain't stepping back from it.
Yeah.
Well, Alice, I know that you've got some promotional activity on this evening, so I want to let you get prepared for it. So thanks for coming on again. It's been a pleasure. We've just belted through it. I thought we've probably got an hour or something, but we've belted through it, and I suppose it's good that we've made good time, because I know you've got a big Twitter event this evening.
Yeah, thank you.
So obviously, like I've said, listeners, the book is out now. But for you, Alice, as we speak, I hope the launch goes really well. And it's a great set of stories. I hope lots of people enjoy it. I'll be doing my bit at my end to push it for you. And hopefully you'll find lots of new readers. So best of luck, and I will catch you again soon.
Talk to you soon.
There you go, everyone. Just a short episode today. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Grab your copy of the Soulseekers Omnibus by following the link in the show notes below. It'll take you across to this episode's page on my site, and you'll find links there that'll take you directly to the book on Amazon. Don't forget to subscribe, give this episode a like for me, drop a comment, I'd love to hear from you. Remember, you can take Fiendish Minds podcast with you wherever you go, so wherever you get your podcasts from, Apple Podcasts, Google, Castbox, Stitcher and Spotify. Make sure you give us a subscribe and tell your friends. Catch you next time.